right, folks, buckle up. We've got Andrew Wilson debating this young lady. Let's just call her future CEO of Cat Food Incorporated. The topic? Women, work, and whether modern feminism has actually delivered what it promised. Spoiler alert, it hasn't. Let's get into it.
Generally speaking, yes, I think that women are happy, healthier at home rather than in the workforce because they all hate it. And every time they get pulled on it, they don't like working. They don't like working long hours. They don't like working. They don't like. Do you like working?
Yeah.
You do? Come on, really?
I find it to be more. I'd rather have a fulfilling career in my future than
a family?
Stay at home all day. No, I mean, I would.
Are you going to outsource the care of your kids to a Venezuelan woman named Marcy, or like, what do you?
No.
Is that what you're going to do, or are you going to stay home with your kids?
Why doesn't my husband stay home?
See, I hear this argument a lot. It's framed as if women are choosing careers. But the reality is, men are socially expected to provide for the family, and that expectation shapes the whole dynamic. Andrew's point is simple. Men generally make more money. And notice this subtle pattern. When a man stays home to care for his family, he never rubs it in the woman's face, never brags about it, and never weaponizes it. But if a woman is the primary caregiver or makes sacrifices, it often gets highlighted, sometimes even used as leverage in discussions. It's a curious double standard, and Andrew's pointing to it without even needing to say it outright.
Well, because generally speaking, men tend to be able to make a lot more money because they work a lot more hours.
Actually, women tend to. I'm pretty sure more women have college degrees than men do in today's society. That's typically an indicator of earning potential. Yeah, it's true. That doesn't mean they make more money. But what I'm saying is a woman could very easily today have a higher paying job than her husband.
She could.
Yeah.
But they usually don't marry men when the man has the higher paying job. That's the big problem. There was a whole
What's the evidence for that claim?
Well, you can go to a channel called Ho Math. Not kidding. It's called Ho Math, where he breaks all of this down. And one of the things that he breaks down, and he's using...
We've had him on the show, by the way.
Yeah, he's using publicly available data in order to do this, is he shows that most women, when you look at the earning potential inside of a house, where there's wife and then later kids, the earning potential of the man almost always higher than a woman before she'll get married to him. In fact, the fact that this doesn't happen is one of the reasons that people clung on to the idea of hypergamy, because it's so commonplace that women will not marry if the social status of the man is less than her, including with earning potential.
Can a mother not earn money and also be a mother?
Yeah, I mean, that used to be the status quo. They used to either work out of the home, or they would do secretary work, or they would do, education. They would do work like that. In fact, feminism completely failed in its job and its duty and its promise to women that it was going to make the world a safer place for women and children, and that it was going to give all these different benefits to women. It really hasn't given them much.
We don't want safety. We want freedom of choice to make our own choices in society and not be assigned to a role of mother and caretaker.
That wasn't the promise of feminism. The promise of feminism was that society was going to be a lot safer and women were going to be a lot happier.
You can't give one universal promise of feminism.
Well, we can look at what the original suffragettes were pushing for, and yeah, we can look at their writings and see what they said. And that was one of the big promises of feminism, was that they were going to make the world a safer place, and that women were going to be happier. And every metric we look at, women are more miserable than ever. And their mental health, 1 in 4 suffers from a mental illness. That's crazy to me. 1 in 4 women suffers from some kind of mental illness.
Here's the thing that feminists want to dodge. Happiness isn't just about options. It's about stress, responsibilities, and what people can realistically handle. Giving someone total freedom doesn't automatically make them happier, no matter how you look at it. That's something people like her don't seem to understand.
They don't seem like they're happier and more well-adjusted. They seem like they're more miserable and not well-adjusted. And while it's true that you can sit here and tell me that you love working, I literally don't believe you, because nobody loves working. Nobody loves it. Like, very few people. You just happen to be, like, for instance, how many hours did you work last week? Was it 60? Was it 50? Was it less than 40?
I'm literally a full-time student. It was not 40, 50, or 60.
Right. Maybe 15?
About that, but that's not relevant to the point. The point is that if I enjoy going out and doing my career more than I do taking care of the kids at home, then why am I tied down to that outcome just because I'm physically weaker? That's the whole point.
You never were tied down to that outcome. You could just not you could just not get married. But if you are married, the optimal system, if you actually value your children, is to stay at home with them. How are they going to get better results than their mother at home with them while their father works? That is the most... If you can give me a more optimal system for raising children than mom at home while dad works, I'd love to hear it.
A more optimal system for raising children than both parents at home? Neither work, and they're taking care of the children? But that
would be entailed impossible, right? For most people.
What's the difference between that and having dad take care of the kids? Before we get into that,
I'll ask your next question, just like I've been answering all of your questions, but answer mine. Can you actually think of a better system than mom at home with the kids and dad working? What could possibly be more optimal for the children than that?
For the children? Having two moms.
So, she actually said it. 2 moms raising a kid. Let's be real. Children benefit from both male and female role models, and a missing dad leaves real gaps. Andrew's reaction says it all. Given her perspective, it's no surprise she can't see the father's role. She probably grew up without a father herself.
That would be more optimal?
They probably get nurtured better. You guys say mothers are better caretakers.
So, I just want to make sure I got this right. First of all, the babies would have to come from somewhere, right?
I thought adoption was a huge thing that you just talked about earlier.
Yeah, but even if we were to entail that, let's just say I granted your argument and 2 moms would be optimal based on them adopting children. There's only going to be X amount of lesbians, which is a very small demographic, and X amount of children to adopt, which is also a small demographic. So that still could not actually be optimal. Even if I granted that it was better in certain circumstances, it could not actually be optimal for most of society to do this. That would not be optimal.
And neither is a woman staying at home and a man going out and working, because increasingly more we see the need for women to go out and work.
No, we don't. If women retracted from the marketplace tomorrow and stayed home, men's wages would necessarily double or triple.
Okay. So if all women didn't work and their rights were attached to the men that were next to them, what if their husband dies?
Then they would do what has always been done and be able to inherit land. Like, I can give you an example of this happening. George, you know who George Washington was?
Yes.
Who was he?
The first president of the United States.
Yeah. He was married to Martha Washington. And they had a big falling out at one point in their marriage because she didn't want to free her slaves, which she inherited. As part of a giant estate, she didn't want to free them, and he couldn't make her because women have always been allowed to own property. That's never been a problem. And if the man dies, though, they always were able to inherit his. That's why she was able to inherit from her father.
What about bank accounts and credit cards?
What about them?
That's a very recent development.
That's true, but do you know when it came to credit cards why it was that women didn't have credit cards? It's because men were responsible for their debt. Women couldn't incur debt. It was illegal. So women couldn't go with a credit card and spend at a store. The man, if she did, the man was responsible for everything she spent for her husband. So that actually made a lot of sense, especially if women aren't working. They might need lines of credit, but that would fall to the men. So if women needed to go get whatever they needed, put it on their man's account, that would take care of that. Pretty good system.
See how good women had it? They could get what they needed without ever being on the hook for debt. Freedom without responsibility. Smart system, but somehow it got labeled as oppression. And people bought it. You'd think history would teach a lesson, but here she is, smiling over another false independence story.
And if it comes to what's optimal for children, doesn't that seem like it's pretty optimal?
Black Flame Nova donated $200. I wish more women on this show were like you. Even though you're a feminist, at least you're respectful, listen and have a good chat. Also, props to Andrew for handling this so well. Haters can shut up now.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know where we were at. But yeah, we were just discussing why that was with credit cards and bank accounts. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah. But that's, you guys were asking me to list examples of like patriarchy or oppression. That's one of them, right? Being unable to...
That doesn't sound very oppressive.
...manage your own finances.
That doesn't sound very oppressive. It sounds like you can just go get whatever the hell you want and somebody else has to pay for it. I don't know why that would be oppression. That sounds like the opposite of oppression. Like, if you were to go to a man, do you think, and you said, listen, you're going to stay at home? You don't even have any children, okay? But you get to stay home and not work, and you can go out and buy whatever the fuck you want, and you're never responsible for the debt of whatever it is you go and buy. You think that they would think that you were oppressing them?
You make too many generalizations. Men nowadays aren't doing that for women. Women have to have financial stability.
I know that they're not doing that for women, but you were just complaining about this law that they couldn't have credit cards or bank accounts.
Yeah.
And I was explaining to you why that law existed. It makes a lot of sense why it existed. Because you're tying everything to a single income for the family. And the optimal system and what was pushed inside of society and what's been tried to be dismantled by feminists and nuclear family. But we used to push the nuclear family. And so in order to make that optimal, which is dad, mom, children, you had to tie everything to one income. And people used to be able to afford to get a single car every couple of years. They'd be able to go out and get a brand new car, bring it back.
They need a woman's income.
Because women,
they need a mother's income.
Because feminism, under rich industrialists, flooded the market with cheap factory labor, which is what industrialists wanted. Cheap-ass factory labor. And that's where women came from, cheap-ass factory labor, and that's what they cared about. That's why they never gave them the vote. People knew it even then, and that's why the 19th was passed rather than a referendum state by state.
I might agree with that, but my argument would be when men go to war, who is supposed to work in the factories?
Well, in that case, it was still mostly men who were designing weapons, things like this. What women were doing were low-skilled jobs. They'd put screws in packs. They'd work on an assembly line, putting a bolt in something. They were doing kind of the menial labor jobs.
Yeah, so
but
they're getting paid less.
But those menial labor jobs would still have, paid less than who? The soldiers who were drafted and had to go off to war were often getting paid far less than what they were making at their jobs. So
yeah, which would mean women need to work even harder to provide for their family during that time. If men are being conscripted, now women have to manage the finances of the home.
You can't complain that there was a yoking where, well, wait, women made less than men. It's like
I didn't complain.
Men
I just stated a fact.
They would also make less than if they had stayed in those jobs. So it seems like that's a sacrifice that they should kind of be willing to make, right?
Okay, yeah, but we've conceded that there are times, like wartime, where women have to take on a financially providing role for the family.
Instead of going and dying, terrible. It's awful. It sounds like they've really had it rough.
Yeah, but that's not the point, is who has it harder. It's that shouldn't women be able to have independent control over their finances from the beginning then?
Well, notice the irony here. What she calls oppression was actually security. Women could get what they needed, but the man carried the legal and financial burden. That's not disenfranchisement. That's insulation. And now, after chasing independence, everyone's drowning in debt with two parents working just to keep up.
Even in wartime, right, when it came to this, what control do you think that they didn't have? They're still able to access these accounts. They just weren't responsible for them. They could get a bank account just through their husband's name. They just weren't responsible for the debt.
Yeah, so if they got too much debt for their husband, I bet they would come home and their husband would beat the shit out of them. You don't see
What kind of argument is that? Husbands weren't coming, they were coming home and fucking them. They weren't coming home and beating them. They were coming home and making, you think the first thing they thought when they got home was, hey baby, where's all my money? Smack, smack, smack. Or do you think that after they hadn't seen a woman
Based on the men I've seen.
That they haven't seen a woman after multiple years in a war theater and they got home. What do you think they were thinking about? Because I got to tell you, I don't think it was about where did the money go.
I don't just mean in a war theater. I mean just like from a day at work, they come home, the wife spent too much of your money, and they're gonna beat the wife up. The Bible says Bible says to raise your hand at your wife if she disobeys you.
Then you should be able to demonstrate or show that women were being abused at these much higher rates, especially domestically. They were not. But what is happening is that children are now abused at a much higher rate because feminism has broken up the nuclear family. So what happens is women, they'll have almost all children now, not all, I'm sorry, but almost over half, last I checked, are not born in wedlock anymore, the children which are born. Single motherhood is at an all-time high, and it's going to continue to increase. And what happens is if you bring in a non-biological parent into the home, the chance of abuse for your children drastically increases.
Notice how this freedom deal works out. 2 parents working, kids raised by strangers, schools acting as babysitters, and everyone wondering why childhood anxiety and delinquency are skyrocketing. But hey, at least mom got her independence, right?
I mean, it drastically increases with a non-biological male parent, stepdad.
You're putting the responsibility of women on the lack of fathers, but you have to know that it's not completely on the responsibility of women, right?
Well, I'm not saying that women bear a full burden or responsibility for, a man abusing them, so they have to get a divorce, or any number of these different cases. But what I am saying is that women are far more likely to end these marriages at a much higher percentage. You're talking college-educated women like you, it's as high as 90% of the marriages which are ended are initiated by them. And then, it's about 67% of general marriages are ended by women, and it's for irreconcilable differences, not for abuse. It's not for abuse, like number 4 down the list is money. But the first one's irreconcilable differences. I just didn't want to be married anymore. Not because of abuse.
Yeah.
So.
I forgot what point we were trying to build to.
Well, we were building in feminism being a destructive path to the nuclear family and how that's one of the primary reasons that I oppose it. And then I gave you example after example of how it has done that.
Okay. So you're saying because feminism is driving up divorce rates, that's why it's destroying the nuclear family.
That's only one reason. The other reason is because now it requires 2 incomes in order to raise a family, which means that more and more women have to send their kids off to public school. Public school gets extended longer and longer periods of time because it ends up being a babysitting platform for women, or for women's children. So basically, the public schools have now become your built-in babysitter, and then you have latchkey kids who come home, and you have these 2-income families rather than having the mom at home, which is, of course, optimal. And that's because we have 2 parents in the workforce, and we should really be trying to strive towards just 1 parent in the workforce. That would be optimal for the kids, right?
Why does that 1 parent in the workforce have to be the man?
Well, they don't have to be, but men can do most of the jobs that require that infrastructure requires. Women can still work. They work as nurses. In fact, they work in the same jobs that they kind of work in now they gravitate towards, which is service work, clerical work, nursing. But what they don't gravitate towards is working on oil rigs, working on shipwrights, working on docks, working on infrastructure, AC control. They don't work on any of that stuff. And so generally speaking, women can be in kind of these support societal roles, and that's fine. But it would be optimal if we were able to pull them back away from that more and more and more, and instead incentivize them to stay at home with their kids, because that would drive wages way up. That would be very helpful for society, and it would be better for the kids.
More men would have lower paying jobs, wouldn't it?
No.
Wouldn't that be the case?
No. So it's just supply and demand. So if you have the only cup in the world, it's worth a lot more than if everybody has the same cup, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the same thing here. If you reduce the workforce by 50%, then they're going to be able to demand higher wages for the job vacancies, because now jobs are competing for them.
No, jobs wouldn't be... Oh, wait, hold on. You reduce the workforce. I told you I'm bad at math. I don't know.
So there it is. Freedom, independence, and equality sound great on paper, but in reality, they come with real trade-offs for families and kids. Makes you think, doesn't it? If you liked this take, smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss the next reaction.